I want to talk about how these early decisions impact downstream. So, Todd, we'll start with you. What are the types of decisions that are made in the first stages of development what are those thoughts and processes that tend to have the actual biggest downstream impact, whether it be on product quality, scalability, speed to clinic? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think with this one, with the end in mind, what would be the most consequential, as you mentioned, on product quality and safety, and the focus on those first? For example, some clear examples: do you do cell isolations? Don't If you choose to do that early. Your cytokine mix or your media background is going to heavily influence the evolution of the cells in your process. And then finally, in the cell and gene therapy space, we're doing at-scale gene editing, knock-ins, knockouts, various modes of that. Make sure that those are extremely robust and defendable in your IND. So for early development, those would be my focal areas. And then really on the automation closed system, if you can get there, implement those, but set up your process so it's amenable at the least for closed automation down the road.
Sure. Okay. Before I move on to Ray for his take from an autologous perspective, I want to address a question that came in from Niranjan. And he or she is asking, when you say risk assessment, what stage of product development are you actually referring to? There are lots of moving parts in early stages and clinical stages. Can you give septic case study examples? Happy to have either one of you answer that question.
I think that might have been. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, there's a lot of risk assessments along this arc. I think the question relates to maybe site transfers, and so you really want to, especially if you're going to a CDMO versus an internal site, you really want to do a gap risk assessment on the process, the equipment, the capabilities, and understand that from a tech transfer point of view. Then there's other risk assessments. We often in this space do site changes, process changes. Those also require significant risk assessments to ensure your comparability strategy is strong.
Yeah, I'd echo what Todd said. I think a lot of this is in sort of where I'm at, sort of sitting early phase and in a autologous company. A lot of it is making sure that there are not just, as Todd said, between site changes, but understanding sort of phase changes. You need to understand what risks you're undertaking by having differences from your preclinical package that you filed in your IND to your phase 1 package. The FDA will ask, what are the differences between your pre-IND, processes that generated all of the safety data that you are using to go first in human versus what you're going to do in the manufacturing. And they'll do the same thing when you go from phase 1 to phase 2, and having an understanding and having a risk assessment where you've listed out those risks and mitigations that you either undertook when you did them or mitigations that you need to undertake in the future when you switch from phase 1 to phase 2 or phase 2 to commercial is very important, so you don't get yourself stuck that when you're looking to make that change, this question comes out of nowhere and surprises you and gives you much more work than you were anticipating and delays timelines and being able to treat the patient in the end.
Thank you both for responding to Niranjan's question. Let us know that we answered you properly and thoroughly, and please keep the questions coming. We will continue to get to them throughout our conversation. Before we move on, though, I do want us to take a step back and, Ray, give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about the early decisions and how it impacts downstream. So from your perspective and at Verismo, what are those decisions that are making the first stages of development having a bigger impact on downstream from a quality, scalability, speed to clinic perspective?
I think a lot of it, in this is it's sort of a catch-22. A lot of it is going to be, early on. Oftentimes, you want to adopt, especially in the autologous perspective, some of these sort of all-in-one devices, but oftentimes that traps you in what can be an inflexible platform. And because you don't have enough product understanding yet, putting yourself in that space will make a lot of decisions on how you evolve your process and adopt future innovations and scale it much more difficult, because you're not changing one or two things, you're changing the whole thing. And when you do that, there might be a lot of product impact. And then the other half of it, I think, is, I promised I would say this a lot. When you don't capture all of the necessary data from your early manufacturing, so that you can later inform what kind of changes you want to make from a product quality, scalability perspective.